You don't want to end up like the spokesman for Subway, do you?
Did you just use a term that excludes women from an occupation?
Okay, let's back up.
Ah! Did you just say spokesman instead of spokesperson when women are just as capable of selling sandwiches as anyone? Are you purposefully trying to use words that assert your male privilege?
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. And I don't know, one of the big buzzwords that we hear in modern society today is toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity. It's the most evil thing in the history of the world. Now, obviously, being comic book fans, comic book readers, as far as the male superheroes, masculinity is normally a defining trait of the characters, but that has been changing as of late. And, well, it's not the newest change we've seen, but it certainly has taken shape, and it seems like there's no going back at this point. And here to talk to me about that is my good friend, the man so cool, they call him the Breen. He's the comic book hoarder. Eric Breen, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, Wes. How are you?
I'm doing pretty okay. Now, Eric, you are an older gentleman, such as myself. And when we were growing up, masculinity was an intrinsic part of entertainment when it came to your male, heroes, whether it be G.I. Joe, He-Man, oozing masculinity on the big screen. You go watch, even Lethal Weapon, lots of machismo coming out of there. But nowadays, it feels like we're seeing four tones of emasculation as far as superhero comics. How long has this been going on, Eric?
I would say it's been going on just to varying degrees for about 20 years, but it's only been the last, I'd say about 7 or 8 years that it's really become noticeable. And now it's to the point to where if you don't notice it, you're blind.
Willfully ignoring it?
Yes.
So what do you think the point of this? Why is it that certain creators feel the need to maybe go out and show that maybe Superman, despite all of his powers, isn't quite enough to handle a problem on his own, that normally Lois Lane kind of has to come in and fix it for him, or potentially his cousin Kara will come in and fix it for him and kind of save him from himself nowadays?
A few years ago, the industry decided to shift their target audience. They decided that it was no longer enough to basically be an industry that targeted, it used to be the industry targeted young boys. Then the age group got older. It started targeting young men and then, men. And there was plenty of material for everybody. So there was plenty of books for girls and women to read as well. But at some point, they decided that the audience they had wasn't the one they necessarily desired. So they kind of shifted things to where it used to be the men were very powerful, very masculine, very in control. And there would be women that would rise to meet that and become equally as competent, capable, and like Wonder Woman.
The best example, Hawkman and Hawkwoman.
Yeah, and Wonder Woman, Sue Storm. So the fact that the men were so capable, strong, etc., when the women would rise to meet that, it gave you the best of both worlds. It gave you, very strong, powerful men, very strong, powerful women. At some point, that was decided that wasn't enough. So the men started taking a lesser role, and you would get to the point to where if you had a male hero and a female hero, the male hero would have to become deferential to her. And I don't know if it's that writers, that a lot of the comic book writers today grew up being taught that masculinity was a bad thing, so it's just a byproduct of their upbringing, or if it's a cause they're committed to. But it just seems like when the woman is just, when you're just told that she's the best without having to earn it, it kind of diminishes what the woman character can be. Certainly diminishes the male character, and to me, it just kind of lessens the impact that any story involving male and female heroes can have.
When you go and read Tom King's Batman, It's like, why is Batman like crying in Catwoman's lap every 5 seconds? And even in the finale, when Batman finally is going to fight Flashpoint Batman and Bane, as soon as Batman sticks one finger on Bane, he's against the wall, almost murdered. But Catwoman, like, she used her whip, she's choking him out. She's going to kill him, by herself. And I'm like, is this a Batman story? Or is this a Catwoman story? It's so strange. But Tom King is one of those creators. I don't know, every single story he ends up making the male hero, the male protagonist, look like a completely ineffectual, like, I don't know, spiritually wounded animal. Like he can't function without the female there. Not only can he not function emotionally, but he can't be a hero either without involvement from the female counterpart.
Well, Tom King only has one story to tell, and he tells it over and over again, and you just hit the nail on the head what that is. It's emasculating the male, elevating the female. One time is a story, 2 times is a pattern, 3 or more is a trope. At some point, you see Tom King's name on something that he's writing, and you just do what my shirt says, because you've read it before, and it wasn't very good. You saw the same thing with Superman, and this wasn't a trope of Bendis. He has his own tropes, but in Superman, Lois was far more capable than him. Obviously, every time he got into it too deep, Kara had to come and save him. And this is Superman. He's the gold standard of superheroes. He shouldn't need to be saved from any threat that doesn't involve magic. And
he's the most powerful superhero in the history of comics.
But he's not the most powerful superhero in 2021
in his own comic.
In his own comic. And you're seeing that everywhere. And it's not just the male superheroes. There's the male supporting characters, what few there are. The male characters are all written, more feminized, more. It's almost like they're lacking in confidence, and they have to wait around. They've become, Mansels in distress. And,
absolutely.
And on the surface, I'm not saying that's, a bad thing by itself. Again, if it happens once or twice, then it's okay. That's a nice role reversal, because you do want this industry to be about strong women, but you can't change gender roles entirely because you want to. And that seems to be what we're doing in the industry now. And it's now the industry seems to be catering towards girls. And if the boys want to come along, that's fine. But
it's weird, because for the most part, I think women and girls respond to strong male characters. They don't. Most women and girls don't want to look up to a guy that's a pussy. To be completely honest about it, like, look what happened with Hawkeye at Marvel. Once they introduced, Kate Bishop,
mm-hmm.
Clint Barton became her sidekick.
Yeah,
it's like he's fucking Hawkeye. She's the tag along, but they reversed it because Matt Fraction is such a fucking idiot. And all of a sudden, Clint Barton is just he was completely pathetic. He was a hero in need of saving constantly.
A lot of the writers today, they've decided that the gender roles need to be flipped, and they're going to do it come hell or high water. So that's why you're getting things like Clint becoming Kate's sidekick, or Rhodey and Captain Marvel being just, basically just a wimp, totally subservient to her. And it doesn't matter how these characters were portrayed for decades, because those books by and large have been deemed problematic by the audience that today's creators want. And I agree with you. I think most girls like stories with strong characters. And I don't know who likes a story where one is elevated at the expense of the other on either side. Now, they got away from that for years. The male hero might still have to save the woman, but it wasn't like she was, tied to the railroad track, screaming, save me, save me. You kind of got the feeling in a lot of cases where if he hadn't gotten there in time, she still would have found a way out. Now it's the men, by and large, in comics have become almost the way women were treated in the 40s and 50s. And I just don't see where that's going to attract a large audience, because you can, like I said, you can try to erase genetics. You can try to erase the way things have been for, centuries. Just because you want it doesn't make it so.
We are in different eras just as far as cultural norms and everything, but that doesn't mean that every male hero all of a sudden has to be subservient or downgraded in relation to side characters that aren't even superheroes. Like Lois Lane does not have a superpower. She's just a reporter that's married to Superman, and the fact that she has to come in there and save him, it's pathetic just for the character and the history. We all live in society right now, Eric. I'm sure you've seen a couple of guys that they are subservient to their wives. The wife is absolutely the alpha, and the guy is playing second fiddle. It happens, but it's not like every relationship is like that. There's complexities out there. We're not seeing that anymore. They just want to show you like one narrative.
And there's nothing wrong with, if that works for you as a couple, that's great. In comic books where everybody is larger than life, where the men are powerful, muscular, and the women are the same, there was a great opportunity to create true equality, but they just stepped right over that. And it's almost like, here's the payback, you cavemen. Yeah. So, see how you like it. And too many, heroines are being elevated without having to earn their spot, because the writers have just handed it to them and said, and Captain Marvel is a perfect example. When does she struggle? Whenever her book stops selling, they give her another power. She's the one, bossing Tony Stark around now. It's just, you're seeing that more and more, and it's kind of like the books, the comics have become less about the hero's journey and more about the hero's lecture.
Yeah, I'm sure you remember seeing who was it, Peter Parker? I think when he lost his billions, next thing you know, he's like sleeping on his girlfriend's couch. She doesn't want him there, by the way. She shows him pity. It's like, yeah, you can crash on my couch and you can wear my like feminist agenda shirt. Well, why don't you just have Peter Parker tuck it all while we're at it? It's like
yeah. Now that one, that was written by Dan Slott, and I'm going to guess that he has no clue how any kind of male-female relationship works. So that was silly enough. But yeah, there's just too many instances where it's so heavy-handed at this point. Sales reflect that it doesn't work. Readers don't want that, male or female. And again, the boys and men that have been reading these comics for decades, they're being pushed to the side again for this phantom audience that has been proven time and time again doesn't exist. Now, I know there's some people that are going to disagree with everything I've said on this video, but maybe because those people themselves started in the hobby after these changes had already been made and don't know that there was ever a time where Storm was the leader of the X-Men, not because the other male characters on the team were ineffectual. She was just better than the very capable men she was surrounded by.
Storm can be a feminist icon within X-Men, but that doesn't mean that that Cyclops should be just deferential to her. He can be his own character too. They can stand up on their own merits equally to each other. You just don't see it nowadays. It's so weird, and it's so obvious, and it's just so in your face that it's hard to keep. It's like, why am I looking at this? Because it becomes frustrating over time. But I don't know, Eric. Is there any way out of this, or is it only going to get worse?
I don't know, because I said they've dug in pretty deep at this point. This is the direction they want the comic book industry to go in. And I think they're going to continue to wait for this audience that hasn't shown up yet to maybe show up. I'd like to think differently, but too many examples. Every new change that's announced, it seems to get a little bit farther away from what comics were and closer to what they want them to be. And it's just at some point you have to decide whether or not the industry has left you behind. I've made that decision. It's always subject to change, but at this point, I don't see the pendulum shifting back anytime soon.
No, when you can take Batman, the ultimate alpha male, like the symbol of masculinity in comic books, and essentially have him weeping and begging for forgiveness every single issue from Catwoman and letting her know that he'd be nothing without her. There's nowhere left to go. You might have done, it might have just been, that was the last straw, I guess. There's no going back. Or at least it feels that way.
It kind of does.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.